Yes, here it is. So the introduction to cybersecurity, this was the topic of the unit number one. We were able to tackle some relation points with the digital security course, and we saw the main definitions that we have to recognize uh, initially related to the cybersecurity content. We were able to see the view of a security expert in addition to the view of an attacker towards an set question of security. A security expert, what should he looks uh, uh, behind the asset and looks for behind the asset, and also the attacker, what he should looks for behind an asset also. So this was actually the last thing we explained last class. We were tackling the environment, which is the network. We were tackling the communication of whatever the media is over a network. We have two nodes. Actually, they have actually different access points where we have to tackle the security in this context. In this example, we have 4 points, but those 4 points, they are actually valid for every single point in the network or in the framework, where, the cyber context. The access, the data access, the input. We have the users authentication access point. We have the let's say the network access or the media where it has to be shared from and shared to let's say channel, and the storage space or storage area or storage media where actually data resides, the data at rest. Those are actually the main areas where security has to be clearly seen and set and settled. Keep going on. Those are actually some examples. We have them actually in our book, actually related to threats that we have to recognize also. The title of example only, so it's a matter of reading here, no more no less. But as per let's say a set category: hardware, software, data, the channels dedicated to communication, and so on. The functional requirements towards the security. Remember the saying that when we said that the cybersecurity set up the cybersecurity, it's not something easy to settle. It's not easy. It's not simple. Remember that slide where we explained that last class. Cybersecurity is something not easy to settle, and we argued that we given the arguments when we said that it is not easy. Why? Because it is not a standardized protocol to settle, and that's it. We succeeded in doing the cybersecurity. No, it's not. If you're going to tackle the cybersecurity based on the use of the standardized utilities, you are failing from the beginning. So it's not the case. And at the same slide, if you remember well, we said that it is a battle of wits. The cybersecurity is a battle of wits between whom and whom? Between two experts, two people that they have, or two parties in general, not people, parties, but they do have the knowledge. They are aware of the technical skills. One is ethically acting to secure. We talk about the security expert. The second one is the attacker. So it's a matter of whom knows more to succeed. Thus, we come to the functional requirements. So it's not easy to set cybersecurity because we cannot count on standardized security appliances and tools, even standardized protocols. Security mechanism means standardized protocols. We mean by that security mechanisms. At the same time, it is a context of knowledge, wit to act. It's a mind, it's a brain, it's a part that has knowledge to act. So there are functional requirements to achieve that. So we are not going to count on the standards, and we are going to count on the skills on top of the standards. The functional requirements, they are actually views that you have to consider: characteristics, capabilities, aspects, scenarios. All of them, they are actually valid to describe or prescribe the requirements, and we talk about the functional requirements. From the technical side, actually, the functional requirement, we have to do a clear control to award access to resources, or to give technically an access path or channel to the resources. When we say, for example, the EduWave, as per an example in our campus here, the EduWave, you as users, you as student, me as an instructor, administrators are administratives, all of us, we use the same username and password fields. When you give you as a student your username and password, you'll be directed to the correct resources for your profile specifically. Why? Because there is technically something in background drawn a path to your given resources. This is a technical measure. This is a functional requirement that has to be set. It is technically seen, viewed, and settled. Another functional requirement that we have to tackle, which is actually the managerial aspect from the perspective. It is the list of protocols. It is the list of protocols that we have to go after in order to make the business run, the procedures run, the services be delivered to the end users, and so on. Policies, politics, rules, allowances, permittances, denials. You are allowed, you are not allowed, in this sense. Those managerial aspects, they are actually behind the awareness and the knowledge of the framework, or the business, let's say, engine, the business channel, the business framework, and so on. So, for example, if we technically speaking, if we just block students from opening the YouTube from 8 to 4 during the day, 8 morning till 4 p.m. During the day, they cannot actually access the YouTube. This is actually because we need the system, or the work environment, or the educational environment run smoothly, because of a list of managerial requirements that we have to settle. This is not technical, so we can run the EduWave, we can run the YouTube also, we can run whatever we want. Technically, we can, but from the managerial view, no, this is another consideration. So it's a matter of administrative policy to implement functional requirement. There is an overlap in between both. Technical functional requirements and managerial functional requirements. Actually, via which we have to tackle, as per an example, the incident response, and the risk plans, and so on. So, in this view, you see that an a list of managerial policies, they have to have a technical perspective, in the sense of, if they put a rule to implement, there have to be a technical measurement to rule, or to govern the work of this managerial policy. This is an overlapping actually view in between the technical and the management uh, functional requirements. Any questions, please, in this level?
No question. No, Mr.
Okay, that's great. So everything is clear. We continue. Regarding the same saying when we said that the cybersecurity setup is not something easy to settle. Why we argued that with it's not feasible to settle up actually the list of the standardized utilities or let's say appliances in an environment to say that we secured our cyber environment, our network, or whatever. Uh, that's there are measurements. There are measurements behind the standardized utilities. But even though we cannot neglect, this does not mean that fully we neglect the standardized security appliances. No, no, we cannot neglect. They are actually with a high level also of potential uh, potency. They have a high potential to act to defend the threats, threats, cyber attacks. They can. So because of that, actually, we have some principles, the design principles. We are actually going to see them, and those design principles we have to recognize in order to settle up the work of those standardized approaches as best as they can. The design principles they have to be actually settled in order to ameliorate the work of the standardized security measurements. So we cannot neglect, and we are not going to neglect. Why? Because we can make them act in a very trustful way. So, sorry for the interruption. Regarding there is no order, but it is just a matter of count. There is no order. There is no first, second, third. It's a matter of count only. It's a quantitative measurement of those design principles. So, the context of the difficulty that we can actually settle up designed architecture via which we see this principle. By the way, first of all, before we start, the principles, what are they? The standardized principles or the standardized utilities? We talk about the antivirus, the firewalls, the security rules or the policies settled up within the network domain or whatever, the network active directory or whatever. Those are standardized principles. Difficulty to settle the best design and architecture actually to make the work run without failure. It is one of the considerations that we have to tackle. So we can actually isolate a system fully. We can fully isolate a system with the view that 100% no one can trespass the security measurement or the list of the security measurements. Yet, yet this is not the required because security has not to prevent the workflow. The security has not to prevent the workflow. In the sense of the work has to continue working actually. last class. I'm sorry for the interruptions. So many calls actually. So regarding the security fundamentals, actually we have actually a list of approaches, standardized approach that we can go actually behind to prevent security failures or security, let's say, threats or whatever attacks. Those are techniques that we may apply for a better utilization of the standardized, for the, let's say, standards, security appliances, security tools, security policies, whatever. We list them one by one just now. So uh, the list here, actually, we're going to define them one by one. The economy mechanism, the fail-safe defaults, the complete mediation. We're going to define them one by one now. Starting with the economy mechanism, actually, it's a scenario via which we apply. It's a scenario via which we apply the list resources by given a way to given an access to the list or the minimum functionalities or resources to make the business run. That's it. Whatever minimum in the minimum talking about the quantity access points we can give to make the business run. That's enough. We don't give extra or optional access points or optional, let's say, login points or whatever. No, this is an architecture via which, or this is a design via which actually to be simply seen by given the minimum access to resources. Very simple. Fail-safe default, actually, it is a scenario via which we have to test the failures to give access, to give permission. So, as the title says, fail-safe, actually, there have to be actually a failure of access to give you an access. There have to be a failure. You fail to access, then after we give you permission. There have to be actually a block, first of all. You will not be passing immediately unless you are being authenticated for the first time. Blocked, then after you'll be given an access. Fail-safe default. The complete mediation, the mediation here actually, every and each single user has to be actually tested against a list of access control, an ACL, access control list. So you are going to, you are asking as a user to access a system if the complete mediation design is implemented. So your credentials, whatever they are, username or password or whatever, token, credit card or whatever, smart card, whatever, it has to be tested against an access control list. Complete mediation. An open design, this is actually a design via which actually the security mechanisms, they have to be declared in clear view. We are using the security number one, security scenario number two, and so on. Whatever security scenarios or standards are utilized, so they have to be declared. This is an open design. We declare we are using the antivirus, tell and tell. We are using the firewall, tell and tell, and so on. This is an open design. Actually, we don't talk about the open design when we are using the appliances like that. But when we are using policies and background security mechanisms like the encryption, when a cryptographic scenario is implemented or enhanced here in a design, so it has to be declared actually for different purposes. And this encryption, once it is declared, so the design implemented is an open design. Isolation, وما أدراك ما isolation, actually it's one of the scenarios via which we can raise up the security into 100% security. But remember, a fully isolated system is a useless system. Thus, we cannot utilize, we cannot give it for a public use. But the isolation is one of the scenarios or one of the designs that we can have the benefit of to isolate components, not systems, not full service, but components from within a project, from within a given framework. For example, we isolate tables inside a database. We isolate functions and procedures from within a project. We isolate network devices. We isolate access points. We isolate components, not a full mechanism. So the isolation It's a scenario via which it's a security actually mechanism via which we can prevent the use of assets in general, not only network assets or assets, whether they are soft or hard, from being utilized by specific credentials or specific users. The encapsulation, it's a context actually via which we gather security scenarios, security, let's say, functions, whether they are, where they are actually similar in some perspectives, altogether. But this thing has to be actually obscure in the sense of the security scenario, security standard applied here, whether they are actually one or two or three, they are available, yes, in the framework, but they are hidden, obscure. They are not being declared, not like the open design. They have to be actually declared to the public. No, the encapsulation they have to be hidden. Yes, gathered, yes, in a given framework, but also hidden somehow. Modularity is another design that we can use different functions of security or dedicated to security that they have standalone functionalities. Okay, we have the control of the validation, the input validation, it's a separate function. Control of the database open or access to the database, different function. Control of the redirecting from a node to another inside the network is another function. We talk about modularity. So every module is controlling a security function. So we are following a modular programming context or modular approach or modular structure or modular architecture, talking about the security only. Then the technique, actually, we know it from the security techniques, the layering, via which we go step by step from a layer, from the outside layers into the deepest layer, layer by layer, until we reach the resources. The firewall is the external layer, the device is the second layer, the let's say the network security is another layer, and so on. Whatever, we talk about layers where security techniques are different, completely different from a layer to another. If you break in the first security layer, you'll fail on the second security layer. Why? Because different techniques are applied. The least astonishment is a scenario, it's a standardized protocol, also it's a design via which the system has to act in a way to astonish a user. What does it mean? It means you are actually, as a user, you are expecting to have a certain output or certain display, but no, the system saddens you by astonishing you and it displays you something different. Yes, surprises you. It is like that. So this astonishment. So you are expecting something, but you find something. Usually in the same context of the system or the let's say the same context of the business in question, it will not direct you from, for example, EduWave to, let's say, Google. No, it's not like that. But it will astonish you by displaying things differently, functionalities they are different, design is different, and things like that. So, in order to avoid the automation of the attack, nobody can actually predict the attack and things like that. So, at this level, actually, do you have any questions, please? Are you with me? Let me give me a
Yes,
chance to answer the
mister.
questions.
No question.
Okay. Just a second, please. Sorry for the interruption. Actually, we had a long list of course today. So I was saying the standardized principles, they are actually just one question. Actually, it comes to my mind now. If I'd like to ask you one question in one of the exams, which best design you'd like to go for from the 12 designs we just explained right now? Sorry, from the 9 designs we explained right now, which best design you are going to go for? As per this question here, you not be able to decide. No, I like this one because it has a short name, or this one because it has a long name, or because this one I can understand the title or something. No, it's not like that. So to go after one of those security, let's say, standards, it's there are some circumstances you have to consider. The appliances you have, the resource you are going to secure, and the technical skills you have. So based on that, you decide which one is better for you. So if we're talking about actually a local network, for example, like the case here of our university, we're not going to go for the open design. So the open design actually requires us to talk about that we are encrypted and we have to declare to everybody. This is a local network. We know that everything is. What are the functionalities? We know that what are the resources. So we don't need to declare the security mechanisms we apply. Even we can, but it's not the best design. So in this way, you can decide which best design you can go for. Let's continue. I'd like to stop actually based on the time actually because to avoid a long explanation. Uh, so please, if you hear your name, just say yes. If you hear your name, just say yes. I'll stop the recording.